I am a 38 years old guy and I have been married to a 41-year-old woman for about 15 years. We have two kids in elementary school. When we first got together, everything was great in our relationship and there were no problems with our ex-life. However, things took a sharp turn for the worse right after we got married. There were a lot of reasons for this, but the solutions we tried always seemed to change, making it hard for us to keep up. I felt like I was constantly trying to meet new expectations. It wore me down every time I thought I had addressed one issue. It seemed like there was another one waiting. A few weeks ago, I moved out of our home. She had told me back in December that she identified as asexual, which means she doesn't experience sexual attraction. I had stopped trying to initiate intimacy years ago, but even though I hadn't made any recent effort, she told me that this was who she was and that she had been sexually traumatized. Around 7 or 8 years ago, we began therapy to try to address our sexual issue. We spent a couple of years going to therapy session every week. After about a year, we even added another therapist who specialized in dealing specifically with sexual problems. Things only got worse from there, and for the past 7 years, our relationship has been completely devoid of intimacy. Even though I had struggled with mild depression for most of my life, I reached a point where I realized I needed medication to help me cope. Honestly, that medication and my kids were the only things that have kept me falling apart completely. Fast forward to the new year, and my wife seemed restless. She started visiting old friends in other states, one of whom is going through a divorce. After spending enough time with them, she informed me that they also had sexual issues in their marriages and believed that men expect too much sexually. She said it was traumatizing for her and that she wanted a divorce. The pain of everything that had happened in our relationship up to this point was excruciating, but this time it felt like I was mourning the loss of our family as a whole. As I began to process everything, I started trying to get various things in order when I had the time. Right now, she's off work, and almost every day when I get home with the kids, she's gone. She locks herself in her bedroom, and on a few occasions, she has become so upset with the kids or with me that I had to take them to my parents' house to get them away from what's happening at home. During this difficult period, I hesitated to reach out to anyone other than my brother and his spouse. My mother is currently dealing with cancer, and I didn't want to add to their burden. Then one weekend, when I had some time off, my wife decided to go out and spend time with her old friends. I was feeling a bit down, so I decided to call my brother and have a chat. After some casual conversation, he told me that his wife had something important to share with me. It was as if time stood still for a moment. He told me, "You might want to consider not delaying the divorce, and you should also get in touch with mom and dad." Then he went on to explain that a few years ago, when our family were spending time together, my wife and sister-in-law were sitting around talking, and my wife said something that left me shocked. She said, "If we ever get divorced, I am going to take him for everything he has." My heart began racing, and I experienced my first panic attack since my teenage years. The comment my wife made was so unlike her that I couldn't believe it. I asked my brother if this was some sort of joke, if she seemed serious when she said it. By the time our conversation ended, he assured me that it was indeed serious. It had taken my sister-in-law by surprise, and she hadn't wanted to share it, but she felt compelled to let me know what might be coming. Shortly after that call, I dialed my parents, and I was a mess, crying, embarrassed, and deeply hurt. I apologized for burdening them with my problems, especially when they already had so much going on. It was during this conversation that my mother mentioned something my wife had said to her a few years earlier. My wife had expressed jealousy about one of my cousins who had recently gone through a divorce, admiring their strength in making that decision. My mom was really taken aback by what my wife had said for obvious reasons, but she chose not to share it with me because it didn't seem relevant at the time. At this point, things were starting to make sense, and I was beginning to form a clearer picture of my wife. I had always harbored suspicions, but whenever I tried to discuss them, she dismissed me, saying I was paranoid. I had trust issues and that she wasn't that kind of person. It made me question my instinct. As the past months unfolded, I continued trying to gather information about our bills, taxes, and other important matters. Meanwhile, my wife's behavior became increasingly erratic. She seemed to be gone whenever she could, and she desperately wanted to leave our house. She expressed her strong dislike of being there. She found a place to stay with her friend's older mother, who didn't ask for much rent. It seemed like this lady needed some company and a helping hand around the house. A few weeks ago, after she came back from a night out with her friends, we sat down with our kids to explain what was happening. One of our children was quite upset and hugged their mother, while the other seemed to be processing the situation quietly. The second child started to show more emotion when they learned that their mother was taking the dog with her. Less than a week later, she was moving out, a bit sooner than we had originally planned. This was because I had to work very early shift at the hospital, and it would be difficult for her to be home by 2 a.m. to take care of the kids. The day arrived when she was moving out. My parents had come to pick up the children, but my wife didn't even give them a goodbye hug. Less than a week after she had moved out, I finally met with a lawyer and initiated the legal process. She appeared eager to cooperate with my lawyer and sign all the necessary documents to move things forward. When the kids were with me, she didn't make an effort to contact them. She only spent a couple of days with them. And from what my children told me, those days mostly involved her exercising and being on her phone. It seemed like she didn't have much interest in the kids, except when it comes to maintaining her appearance. There are more details, but I won't go into them much. Since she moved out, I have been gradually getting more comfortable with the situation and doing my best to maintain a peaceful atmosphere. I even went as far as giving her groceries when the kids were visiting her because she was tight on cash and didn't have anything to eat. I have also sent her some money on a couple of occasions when her finances were in the red, with the understanding that she should consider it payment toward a shared bill that we haven't separated yet. I have heard several people criticize me for doing this, saying it was foolish, but I'm trying to keep things civil, and to some extent, it does have an impact on the kids' well-being. That's what I'm telling myself, and it's not entirely untrue. All these matters reached a breaking point at the end of last week. She had taken the kids for a couple of days, and I had a long shift, at least one of them. I came home from work that day, and I have been trying my best to make the most of the time when my kids are not with me. Actively missing them doesn't help, and I have several hobbies and activities I usually enjoy, one of which is working on music. So I set up the computer, turned it on, and started connecting everything. However, I kept getting annoying prompts related to sync issues with my wife's iCloud account. Frustrated, I began tinkering around, trying to resolve the problem, and ended up in the photos section. And if you think you know what happened next, you're absolutely right. Even though she had cleared the computer before she left, some things managed to slip through the cracks. I was suddenly confronted with hundreds of pictures and videos, some of them very explicit, showing her cheating on me with a mutual friend over the past few months. It was a devastating discovery, and I felt like I had wasted the last 15 years of my life being married to an image she had projected. The day after I found this evidence, she brought the kids back home, and I did my best to keep my composure. I didn't confront her about it and try to act normal for the sake of my kids. There's more to this story that I might share in the future, but for now, I wanted to post this as a message to those who are going through similar struggles. Part of me is glad that I put in the effort to try to fix things, because had this revelation not come to light, I might have regretted not trying harder. The other part of me wanted to emphasize the importance of trusting your gut's instincts. It sometimes doesn't feel right. Don't let someone convince you otherwise. I don't mean to say that your gut instinct is always right, but it should never be ignored. I will try to provide more details to fill in the gaps. Firstly, the person she was cheating with isn't married. He's an old boyfriend of hers. I actually found a message she sent him back when we were in therapy, discussing a dream she had about fooling around with him. At the end of the message, she told him not to mention it to me because I would overreact. When I confronted her about it back then, she brushed it off, saying I was overreacting and that even our therapist said it was nothing. Interestingly, our therapist was the same one she had seen when she was a teenager and in her early 20s. Looking back, I don't know why I ever thought that therapist was a good idea. I want to make it clear that I have no intention of sharing photos of her. I see them as undeniable evidence of her infidelity. Yes, they are timestamped, and I plan to share all this information with my lawyer. Since the beginning of January, I have been documenting what's been happening each day, noting times and details about her action and interaction with the kids. Now that she's in her own place, I won't be able to get video recording of those interactions. However, I have thought about recording audios of our in-person interaction if I can find a way, and my lawyer have encouraged me to do so. At the moment, she seemed quite infatuated with this other guy and appears eager to move forward with the divorce, especially because she will be entitled to half of my 401k. As for our assets, we actually divided everything quite amicably before she moved out. The truth is, we didn't have many assets to divide. We sold our house at the end of last year and moved into my parents' old house, which is in a trust and not owned by either of us. Thanks to my parents' foresight, we divided the money we made from selling the house evenly. Unfortunately, my wife managed to spend roughly $14,000 of her share in less than 2 months, and there's not much to show for it. Some of that money was used for her affair partner, and I have one invoice for $100 as evidence. There may be more. Initially, when it came to custody arrangement, we agreed on a 50-50 split, with neither of us paying alimony or child support. However, now that this recent development have come to light, my lawyer mentioned that the initial split wouldn't matter much legally, but he would include it if I wanted. At that time, I told him not to worry about it, since none of this has surfaced yet. About a week later, I talked to her about the custody arrangement and suggested it might need to be a 60-40 in my favor for me to be the primary caregiver. Surprisingly, she agreed without any resistance. I believe she's so preoccupied with what's happening in her life right now that she wants to maintain the appearance of being a good mother. Her own mother frequently talks to her and seems to assume that she's not abandoning her kids, which only adds to my wife's anxiety. After I made the Reddit post yesterday, I received a message from her asking me to call her, which was unusual because she usually communicates through text. I was convinced that she was going to tell me about the person she's seeing, not that she had been seeing someone for a few months at least. To my surprise, that wasn't what she wanted to talk about. When I called her, she was crying, and she told me about her struggles with physical therapy for her toe, which she injured at work last year. She was upset because the therapy wasn't going well, and she couldn't move her toe properly. She mentioned that she wasn't supposed to be driving around or doing intense exercise, which made me chuckle inward and smile for the first time since I discovered the pictures and video. She then told me that she had no money and there was uncertainty about the person she was staying with, possibly selling the house soon. When she returns to work, she's unsure how she would manage to spend time with the kids. She had been taking them for partial weekends for the past 2 weeks, but mentioned that she had a lot of plans in the city for the upcoming weekend and couldn't see them. At this point, I decided to go back to being accommodating like I used to be. I assumed that we would find a way and establish a routine to ensure she could see the kids regularly. However, she then mentioned that her plan on moving closer to us might not work out due to potential high cost, and she might have to move even further away than she currently is, currently about 15 miles away. Her suggested new location would be about 35 miles away. I told her we could still figure things out, but she might end up seeing the kids less often. Surprisingly, she didn't hesitate, and almost as if it was planned, she mentioned that she might have to move across the border into the next state because she could earn more money there, despite the higher cost of living. This would place her about 70 to 90 miles away from us, depending on the route, meaning she would likely see the kids even less frequently. I couldn't imagine how a move of that distance would work with the kids' schedule and our shared responsibilities. I felt a growing sense of unease. It seems like she was showing less and less interest in our children as time went on, almost as if she was trying to offload her parental responsibility onto me. I couldn't fathom why she would want to move so far away from the children we have brought to this world. I went into investigation mode to piece together the puzzle. I looked through her lover's social media account and found revealing information about her affair partner. It was a harsh revelation to swallow. She was willing to abandon her own children just to be closer to her lover. Her lover just got a job in that area, which is why she wanted to move and abandon our kids and all parental responsibilities to me. At the same time, act amongst family and friends as though she is a responsible mother. I am not just going to change my life and schedule at the whim of her lover. The realization left me heartbroken and furious. I couldn't let her escape her responsibility as a parent while still maintaining the facade of a mother. I reached out to my lawyer and filed a motion to have her sign over her rights as a parent. She called me barraging me about it, and I confronted her with the truth about the reason why she's leaving was because of her affair partner, and I tried to convince her to sign off the kid to me. During our conversation, I felt like she was agreeing to it, but changed her mind. When I mentioned that I wouldn't keep it to herself, her reaction was a mix of anger and surprise. She refused to sign off her parental rights, clinging to the illusion of motherhood, even though her actions told a different story. She didn't care about the kids, only about her own desire. Frustration and determination fueled me to expose her to her family. I wanted them to know the truth about the person she had become. It was a painful step, but one I felt was necessary to safeguard my kid's future. When she realized what I had done, she was mad at me and insisted that she was going to go ahead with her plans to move and had no intention of signing away her rights as a mother, as we could co-parent from a long distance. She then accused me of being vindictive and a manipulative person. I didn't argue with her. I went back to my lawyer and filed for child support. When she realized that if I pursue for child support, she would have to pay for the kids' welfare, something she couldn't afford. Her affair partner clearly didn't want that burden either. Suddenly, the prospect of losing face as a responsible parent became too much for her to bear. She couldn't afford to pay child support and didn't want her image to be tarnished any further. In the end, she abandoned her plan to move and reluctantly agreed to continue sharing custody of our children. It was a hard-won victory based on principle for me, but it was a battle I was willing to fight. Even though I know she cares more about her affair partner than our kids, but I'm not willing to accommodate her and allow her to eat her cake and have it. Thank you for making it to the end of this story. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get some reaction in the comment section. Thank you and have a wonderful day.